thought that you wanted.
Oh. So,
And I'll just read it for...
no, yeah. So I guess we'll start out with the first question. So where did you live during this time period, during World War II?
Okay, are you ready to start?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was a 16-year-old junior in high school at Lebanon, Oregon, when World War II began. When I graduated, I moved to Salem to attend Willamette University and continued to live in Salem the remainder of the war, which ended in August of 1945. And Germany started World War II, as you probably know, by invading Poland in 1939 and defeated them in April of 1940. And Britain and France then responded by declaring war on Germany on September 3rd, 1939. And in May of 1940, Germany began its assault on Western Europe in the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, and France. And the U.S. declared war on Japan following being bombed on December 7th, 1941 at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. And on December 11th, 1941, Germany and Italy declared war on the U.S. And Germany surrendered on May 2nd, 1945 to Italy. Then Hitler committed suicide on April 30th, 1945. And on May 7th, Germany surrendered to the Western Allies, and on May 9th to the Soviets, and Japan surrendered on September 2nd, 1945.
Cool. Where did you, so you said you lived in Salem most of the time, and so who did you live with, and what was your family like during?
I lived with my father and brother and two sisters in Lebanon before moving to Salem. And then my sister and I had an apartment in Salem when we both went to Willamette University.
So you guys went to college together?
Pardon?
You guys went to college together?
Yeah. Yeah. And my mother had passed away when I was 10 years old, so my father raised us 4 children.
And so who was involved, so in your family, your brother was involved in World War II?
Yes.
Yeah, so do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, he joined the Navy, that would have been in 1941, and served for, during the 4 years, all within the United States. No, that's not who he did. He enlisted in Salem and was sent to Sandpoint, Idaho for boot camp, and was there for a while, and then he went to Long Beach, California, to the naval base down there for the balance of the war.
Wow, that's crazy. When he left for war, how did you feel? How did your family react?
Well, you know, it was very sad because in those days, when one of the family went off to war, you didn't know if you were ever going to see them again.
Yeah.
So there was always that anxiety when you would hear of a big battle as to whether or not your loved one was involved.
So what did you hear about the war when you were at home?
Let's see what was happening. Well, a lot of the news was censored in those days, as were letters from the troops to their families and their loved ones. Censoring was necessary in order to preserve the safety of the armed forces who were on the move in the battlefields. And we nevertheless were given all the information that the government felt comfortable in releasing. And security and censoring were very tight in those days.
Did that anger you at all, or were you fine
Well,
with it?
when you stop to think about why they were doing that, I mean, sure, it will maybe save the life of my loved one out on the battlefield, because just the slightest hint of which particular battalion, they call them, was on the move to a certain spot would alert the Germans
Right.
to be there when they arrived.
Yeah. So it's probably something's for the better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was really.
Were you in favor of going into World War II?
The what?
Were you in favor of going into World War II?
Well, I had mixed feelings about that because of so much killing, and I don't really believe in that. But it was, and then I have to say a strong yes, because it was necessary in order to preserve the freedoms upon which this country was built. And the country was founded with freedom being the main reasons. So there was no other choice, and we were determined that Hitler would not conquer this country. And war was the only way to get to it.
Scary.
So,
What was America like during the war? Was it hectic? Was it?
well, it was rather hectic, but it was very much alive. And people were very willing to work together
Right.
for one common cause, and that was to preserve liberty and freedom, and to save this country from having to go under the rule of Hitler, which would have been a terrible thing.
Yeah.
Very much so.
And there was a patriotism in the citizens at that time, like none ever seen before or since.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun during that time, but we really worked very hard.
Yeah. Is that how you guys contributed to the war? Like just extra work and
Yeah.
food being rationed.
Right, yeah. And let's see, yeah, everyone did their part. The women went to work in the shipyards, taking over welding jobs and other manual labor jobs that the men who had been drafted or who volunteered had held. And many young and even older women were trained to be mechanics in the fields of shipbuilding and airplane building and
Women were doing that.
yeah.
Oh wow.
Oh, lots of women. That's where the term Rosie the Riveter came up. When
Yeah.
there were so many ladies out at the shipyards here in Portland who were doing the riveting jobs on these steel boats.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And then thousands, and let's see, and then also they were trained to be mechanics in the aircraft factories and other factories which supplied parts for the armed forces. And also, let's see, what else did they do? Yeah, thousands were either selling or buying war bonds, which were sold during the war. There was like a savings bond. Or they entertained the troops through the USO organizations, who provided places where the troops could go to dance or have some home-cooked food and or just a cup of coffee and relax.
Right.
And many workers were in the factories making parachutes for the Army, Navy, and the Air Force, or whoever used them.
Yeah.
And also uniforms and shoes and boots for the troops. So there was a lot of, it was very high employment rate at that time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just, and yet it was hard sometimes to find people to do a specific job because, well, like there was a shortage of doctors and nurses because so many had gone off to the
soldiers.
the hospitals for the troops.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes it seemed like we were all living at lightning speed just to get things accomplished, and we got them accomplished.
Yeah. How did you feel about the presidency, Roosevelt? Did you?
Well, let's see, where I got this. Roosevelt was considered a very good leader,
Mm-hmm.
and he, what number you got that one on?
That one's number 12.
Did you contribute to the war? I know it was in here.
Should be right there.
Oh, there, yeah. Yeah, he was also an inspiring leader who kept the country moving in the right direction at that time during the war. But just like all presidents, he was loved by many and hated by many
Right.
for a lot of his policies, but he did an awful lot of good for the country.
So you liked him a lot?
Yeah, I did like him.
Mm-hmm.
He's, some of his personal life was not what you condone.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
And that
a lot of
they hit it
presidents.
pretty well.
Yes.
Yeah. But he also established, after the war, he established the Civilian Conservation Corps,
Yeah.
which an awful lot of the